we are trying to be helping everyone to be able to be a little bit more able to do things better. So we have successful employers talking about their experience in starting and also running neurodiversity at work or equivalent programs.
Mm-hmm.
We also have a lot of neurodiverse individuals who are representing many different professions. So traditionally, a lot of people are talking about the tech industry, but really, neurodiverse individuals are very much representing all different fields. So we are able to find very good prime examples of neurodiverse individuals in, say, the field of medicine, the field of the law, and also even entertainment industry, as well as other even non-science industries. So basically, we have this conference that's going to be running for 3 days. In addition to a lot of the employment-related topics, we also have topics that are related to, say, education in the higher in university or college level. We also have talks that are about the K through 12 level. We have a series of talks that are on mental health, and we also have a series of talks that are related to human rights. So I believe your audience will find something, no matter what they are truly interested in.
Thanks, Lawrence. We'll be sure to share that link. And I really appreciate how thorough your programming is, and the fact that you're engaging an entire system, an entire pipeline from K to 12 through to post-secondary and into the workforce, because it's when we really, consider the entire continuum of participation and the stakeholders involved. I think that's how you really create systemic change. But that's the next thing I actually want to ask you a little bit about. From your perspective, what does it take to build these environments to create positive workspaces and work cultures for employees?
Usually, what we think is two major ingredients. One major ingredient in building an accessible workforce is to be able to have the leaders to be really telling everyone that it is actually good to have a neurodiversity at work related program, or have policies that are supporting things that are in neurodiversity at work program. And I want to say that is because it is, while it's good to have a program, it's good to even not have a program, but actually it's all practice across the board. You don't have a program, but basically everyone will benefit. So having the leaders in organizations supported is very important. And the other part is the grassroots effort. If there are good grassroots effort that can push the leaders and all the people in the company to understand what why it is important to have neurodiversity friendly workplaces, then it's going to be needing very little explanation from the leaders. It's not going to be only top down. It is also explained by an average um employee that's understanding uh, what neurodiversity really means. Um, and these workplaces can be really helpful in thinking about, or we should be thinking about these workplaces is not only for the people with differences or neurodiverse individuals, but also for really everyone, as we are going to be seeing a lot more changes in our world. Especially right now, we are still in the middle of the pandemic. We are seeing a lot of this um, uh, accessible ways of working being more acceptable.
Absolutely. I think you're so right to say that, obviously the pandemic has been devastating, but, some of the learnings coming out of it is that people can be productive from different kind of work environments and from different areas and with different accommodations, and that accessible, work environments and workforces really benefit everyone. And I think it's an interesting thing to compound that with the labor shortage we're seeing. So really getting into the economic impact area of this conversation. Are you seeing major organizations adapt, A, as a result of the pandemic, and B, given the labor shortage, to really dismantle exclusionary bias and really do the work that's necessary to see candidates in all of their kind of brilliance and productivity and everything they bring to the table, despite some deeply ingrained or historical biases that we see for people with disabilities in the workplace?
Yeah, well, I definitely have been seeing there are more organizations um, wanting to be pursuing the talent pools that they have not really explored in the past, and this is very true for uh, the group of people on the autism spectrum, and a lot of tech industry professionals are uh, having a lot of big impact on technology, and and leaders start to think about like there may be some special kind of talents that they can be pulling from the neurodiverse population. And say, for example, for autistic individuals, a lot of the time they are very detail oriented, and they are also very persistent in doing what they are doing. And because of that, they really can get uh, innovation to the company. So, especially because of that, that will be a good way of bringing in talent.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just giving an example for autism. It's true also for ADHD or dyslexia. They have their own common strains that they bring in, and so I would say it's not only about the labor shortage. It's really about the talent acquisition that companies are noticing that it is actually very important to bring in new perspectives and new talents, and they will be benefiting from um, doing their recruitment in a different way.
Thank you for that, Lawrence. And so I wanted to ask you, what does that conscious recruitment and retention look like? And in your opinion, what organizations are doing it well right now?
Yeah, so what we have been seeing is that um, when when you're saying like conscious recruitment and retention related to the neurodiversity at work related programs, um, what it looks like it is that in the recruitment, the company that have the insight in neurodiversity will be able to adjust their way of doing things in terms of how they post their positions to make sure that the positions are going to be written up as something that's more neurodiversity friendly, something that is going to be attracting the neurodiverse individuals and not going to be pushing them not to apply for those positions because of some kind of wording that is going to help to get them to think they are not going to be successful in their job. It is also important for the organizations to start changing their interview process. A lot of the interview process are really, unfortunately, including some kind of first impressions in their evaluation, especially in the screening stage. And a lot of neurodiverse individuals would be screened out because of that. So, so basically, what we can say is that uh, with the with the recruitment phase, if the I hear some noise in another line for some reason. Uh, Anyways, so basically, in the recruitment phase, when we are able to get the employers to assess the neurodiverse individuals for their strengths, rather than getting the first impressions from the applicant, they are going to be better off because they are going to understand how the neurodiverse individuals are going to be able to do the job well, rather than trying to really find some people that may appear superficially to be fitting in the company. And
Oh, sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah, and also, I mean, we can also extend to like the retention phase as well. That a lot of the accommodations that are basically very easily uh, executed or installed. But basically, if you don't want um, the neurodiverse individuals, I mean, if you want the neurodiverse individuals to work best, you basically want to make the workplace more uh, kind of suitable for this person to work. So if the accommodations are already set in place in the beginning of the employment, then the person is going to be able to start work really effectively right away.
Absolutely.
And this is very different from uh, a lot of the experiences from most people that are considered neurodiverse, that they oftentimes don't get the necessary accommodations early, and because of that, that affect uh, their their work and their productivity.
I think that's an important point. There is really no one size fits all approach when it comes to setting employees up for success and creating inclusive workplaces. I also think in order for people to be able to do that early on in the employment cycle, they actually have to feel comfortable to be able to disclose, right? And actually ask for the accommodations that they actually need to be set up for success. And, I think that one piece of bias is that people think that only people with disabilities need accommodations, and we know that isn't the truth. Everybody needs their own kind of personalized work plans and ways to be successful, and workstations and all the things that really empower us to be our most productive selves. So I think one company that's doing it very, very well is Microsoft. And for those in our audience, I highly recommend them checking out Jenny Leigh-Fleury's work, who's the global accessibility lead for Microsoft, and to really investigate what are the companies that really do that conscious work, that really are building cultures of inclusion, and to Lawrence's point, setting people up for success so that all of their talents can be instrumentalized. So Lawrence, the next thing I want to talk about a little bit is diving a little bit more into how we break up the echo chambers and how we really include the A for accessibility more so in EDI work more broadly. So, as we know, there's a lot of literature that states accessibility is often missing from diversity and inclusion conversations. And so I really commend DIFEST for doing it so well here. So, according to Caroline Casey, one statistic that I read, who's the founder of the Valuable 500, only 3% of articles discussing diversity published in 2019 and 2020 actually referenced disability. So, what is the missing link between accessibility and broader EDI work?
Well, when we are thinking about diversity, equity, inclusion, I think what we oftentimes are thinking that this is really social justice, and maybe a little bit about like including more perspectives. But a lot of people think this is more social justice, and the accessibility part, it seems to be something that that is conceptualized, at least subconsciously, by people, that this is something that we're helping this individual, and this is a social justice act, which is there's nothing wrong with it. But for businesses, a lot of the time they are really about their bottom line. They really want to have increased innovation, increased productivity. But if we are thinking that the accessibility is really not about just giving this almost like superficially, some people think that this is something that is a favor to give to individuals that are that do things differently. And if that's the attitude, that's not going to be helping a lot of organizations to think that this is the right thing to do, that in terms of getting the company to be more accessible. I mean, to get the company to be more successful in terms of the general productivity and innovation for the entire organization. So what we would want to see is that people embrace that this accessibility, the A, to give all the necessary things, the tools that you need, as things that can get the person to work best, and hence the person will be able to be the most productive and innovative. Then it will be a different ball game. Just like someone that has a back pain, for example, maybe that person would need an ergonomic chair, and that may solve the problem. But a lot of the time, a lot of companies don't even ask about why you need an ergonomic chair, and they will just give it to you because it is generally a good thing. If you're going to be working for 8 hours a day or more, with a good ergonomic chair, that's going to be making sure that you're going to stay healthy and you won't have the back pain, and then thereby is going to be good for the company. So you
Absolutely.
don't have to have the back pain in order to require organizations to think that you actually will benefit from it and the company will benefit from it. The same thing for neurodiversity. If we are thinking that the individuals are going to be working at best if they are in a quieter place, if they have an environment that can be working at their best, and an environment that they can communicate better without the anxiety that is oftentimes be triggered by like certain kinds of environment that are predictable.
Right.
All of that can actually make things much better, and make the accessibility more able to be connected to the DE&I.
Excellent. Thank you, Lawrence. And how quickly we're running out of time with just a couple of minutes left to go. So if anyone in our audience does have a question, feel free to put in the chat, or if we run out of time, Lawrence and I can certainly answer them afterwards. But I want to spend our few remaining moments actually getting a little bit more tactical. So I guess my next question for you is, how can organizations get leaders in the room who aren't working in HR or equity, diversity, and inclusion? What we know is that perhaps many in our audience here today, and more broadly, a lot of people who come to these conversations are well-versed on these issues, are doing the work day to day. But ultimately, what we really need to drive home is that this is actually leadership competency, right? That accessibility in the workplace and setting up your employees for success, regardless of their disability, is actually something that all leaders need to be invested in. So my question is for you, how do we ensure we're raising disability awareness more broadly and, through the lens of neurodiversity to ensure professionals in the space aren't operating in echo chambers?
Yeah, so we don't want to only have conferences that are going to be having the same people coming over and over again. So what we can say is that it is important for real impactful leaders in different sectors to be speaking out. Like I think in the public sector, if there are more conversations about neurodiversity, that would be making things very different. We have not, at least I have not seen any kind of discussion on TV ads or things like that to tell people about neurodiversity and how that's actually good for everyone. And if there is some kind of messaging that is more in a general public way of getting everyone to be thinking about neurodiversity and is no longer a foreign concept, is a welcome concept, then leaders would very easily adopt it. A lot of leaders already want to adopt it in many organizations that I know of. And sometimes they are not able to really bring their acts together, not because there are no leaders that want to do it, it's the rest of the company not ready to do it. So because of that, I think generally awareness in a larger scale to reach any new population as much as possible, I think that may be one way of solving this problem.
Thank you for that, Lawrence. And, I think that's such a strong call to action for our friends who are here today joining us for the conversation. Thank you for being here and championing this work and critical attention to this lens. But who can you take to come with you that maybe is a little bit less confident, who could stand to learn a little bit more, and who is an open and receptive leader? But we all need, education and exposure to different kinds of communities, whether that be at different kinds of talks like this, whether it be connecting your employee resource groups, or really just kind of intentionally breaking those silos. So I guess the question for all of us is, what actions are all of us, and despite our job description, taking to facilitate inclusion, participation, and promotion of employees with disabilities and those with neurodiversity disabilities as well. I do have one last question for you, because I know we're nearly at time here. But it's really about positive transformation and the return to office, so that we can really consciously take all the things that we've learned in the past couple of years from the pandemic and really place it in the here and now. So what we know is that this level of disruption during the pandemic has been very negative. But at the end of the day, we have seen the ability for people to work from home or to work in workstations that are personalized and still be productive and still meet or exceed the bottom line. But we also know that, corporate offices have been empty for some time, and people are starting to have a phased return to work. But are people doing it consciously, I guess, is my question for you. And post-pandemic, how can we work to frame and structure a return to work that's not ableist?
Yeah, I think with the pandemic, because so many people have no choice but to work from home, and they have a lot of people are already able to show that they are working more effectively for various different reasons. And for neurodiverse individuals, maybe it's because of the stress that they don't have to be in the office all day to use the time to really handle social interactions that cause a lot of energy for them. But for some other people that are maybe not neurodiverse, but they need to balance between work life and home life, and maybe they need to pick up their children or from school, and working from home is making it a lot more productive for them. So all of those now much more understood by supervisors, because a lot of supervisors have to go through all of those themselves. So what I would say is that as long as there is a good rationale about the change in the kind of the mix between working in person versus working from home, once we can understand that it is justified to optimize for the best productivity and performance, I think the leadership in organizations would understand that. And as long as there's a way of really bringing everyone together to a lot of the time, working in person has the little magic of like really bringing people together, right? Because
Absolutely.
they're physically together. As long as that piece is still going to be there, and people in general acknowledge that this is really something that is within the value system, the belief system of the organization, then I think it will be something that will be embraced.
That's beautifully said, Lawrence. And I can't thank you enough for the conversation today. I think there was many calls to action and next steps. For our audience, I'd like you to check out and invite you to check out Dr. Lawrence Fung's work at the Stanford Neurodiversity Project, and also the upcoming summit. And, you know, like we said before, who are you going to bring to your next EDIA conversation, and how are you going to continue to personally champion this in your work? So, Lawrence, it was such a pleasure to connect with you today and host you in this conversation. I can't thank you enough, and a huge thank you to our audience as well. Wishing you a great rest of your DIFEST experience. Take care.
Thank you, Victoria.
Hi, DIFESTers. My name is Rudinov Vincent, and I am the founder of DIFEST Global. A warm welcome to you all on the third edition. This year, DIFEST will focus on the future of work by addressing authenticity, belongingness, and social impact as some of the most important practices for building a more inclusive and purpose-driven workplace for everyone to thrive. Before we begin, I would like to humbly thank our belonging partner, Newsella, for supporting our initiative in democratizing world-class content and promoting equity in education. On this note, I would like to welcome you to our session on how authenticity helps enhance and build a culture of inclusion for organizational success. We have in conversation two of the world's most passionate DEI professionals who are working hard to cultivating a culture of authenticity. They believe how critical it is to make employees feel safe and belonged, at the same time understand the business benefits of creating workplace authenticity. Therefore, please welcome Vieshaka Dutta and Kristin Joy Ekkens.
Thank you, Rudinov, and hello, Kristin.
Hello, so great to see you. Thank you, Rudinov. Good to see you, Vieshaka. So good to see you.
Awesome. And how are you today?
You know, I'm doing really well. I woke up this morning and I thought we get to have this amazing conversation. And in our precursor, when we met, it just was amazing. So I'm eager to be here with everyone and everyone listening in a sense, on our fireside chat. But it's fantastic to be able to talk with you.
Thank you so much. I'm also really excited. And of course, our last connect was very energizing for me. In fact, I went back with so many thoughts. And this is one of my most favorite subjects because I feel very happy, very deeply happy of all the work that I see around the world, around diversity, work around belongingness, creating these equitable spaces. And inclusion to me is the bedrock of everything. And, from where you rise, you raise your game, we go to the next, we sustain what we've achieved. And hence, I'm truly excited about the topic as well.
And it's a difficult one, I think, when we think about this topic and authenticity and what it means to us. Maybe if we start there with each other and just kind of talk about how we see authenticity and what it means to be authentic, because it can go in so many ways and so many routes, and I'll just start off by saying, I think about these different life arenas. So I'm a certified high performance coach. And one of the things that we think about are these life arenas that sometimes we just don't do well at all with integrating into our everyday, and so some of those I'll just, mention the life arenas I think about. It's health. It's around our relationships. It's around our family and our friends. So relationship, the first one being maybe a partner or someone we're very close to. Our family and friends, our mission, and if we feel clear about what we're doing, our finances, hobbies or experiences that we have, and then even our spirit. And these things, I want to hear from you about this, because for me, these life arenas, when I have found that some are off, or I'm not focused in one of those areas, or I'm too focused in a certain area, that I'm not going to be my authentic self at work, and I end up burning out. What's been your experience, in thinking about bringing your authentic self to work?
Yeah, I think it's, I can so resonate with all of them. Even the fact that when you spoke about the ways we deal with finances and more, everything affects who we are, how we,
Yes.
it's a way of our own picture in our, our, how we see ourselves and how we see ourselves in context to our environment, right? So I'll say this, that apart from what you said, I'm just going to add to it because I completely agree with what you said, right? How we, how we think we are, how safe we feel in an environment. And then even before, even in environments where we feel we belong, there are pieces of us that may be difficult to bring in, right? So, for example, if we are sharing, I encourage a lot of people to be vulnerable, because my own experience in DEI, and I think I've worked in this space since 2008. And in my life experience, I've felt that a lot of us go through challenges, and we try to understand underrepresented groups and its challenges, life journeys, and challenges are not always constant. There are big wins that bring you up, and then there are these tough times. And I've also seen people judge people around that time, saying that, okay, now this person is a good place, and that let's move on. Whereas the struggle does come back. And I have also seen that people who've gone through challenges, when they are in better place, they don't want to talk about this, thinking that either I'm going to be judged as someone who's continuously talking about struggle, and hence maybe I'm not cutting it as a great professional, or I don't want to talk about it because I'm over it now. Unfortunately, what it does is it doesn't invest back in that inclusive environment that we want to create or we enjoy at certain point of time, because others see everyone else is doing okay, they've moved on, and if they are going through a certain challenge, it could be emotional and in mental health, which is not visible or not tangible to talk about, or if it is something that they feel that it is happening to them because of them, like they are responsible for everything else that's happening in their life, they will not be able to talk about it because they're not seeing anyone else in that zone. So they feel probably guilty of being in that space. And be it grief about something, be it struggling with your own body image, your own professional competency image in your head, or even when it comes to calling it out, while we are supporting others, that maybe this is a space where you're feeling stuck in, but you can move on. Like you may not, this may not be your only choice. Sometimes we also feel, like if we are not just being ourselves, we are thinking about how we may be judged. These are all of these conversations that are so important, that kind of go under the cover. Right?
Yeah. And I think, along with that fear maybe of being othered that each one of us has, the opposite of belonging, but fear of being othered. And so to show up and share something so vulnerable, that maybe it is about our mental health, or maybe it is about personal struggles that we've had and that we can hide in the workplace, right? Those can hide, we can hide it at home to an extent, until all of a sudden it's showing up in our performance or in how exhausted we are at work, and we're trying to hide that, whatever it might be. I do want to, back to the vulnerability. First, I want to thank you for something you posted on LinkedIn, and I hope you don't mind me calling it out here, because I figured it was public on LinkedIn. You might know what I'm about to say. Is that okay with you? Okay.
I'm okay with it.
Thank you. So, what I wrote down here was, you posted this last week and related to World Mental Health Day, and being a survivor of some extreme personal situations, you said, I was told by everyone that women need to take all things in their stride as caregivers and homemakers. And you went on to say, I really felt like I had to fix myself when you went through some of these challenges. And I first want to thank you for your vulnerability in that post, because we need to all be doing that and making these posts. So I think the way that you approach this and lead and show that we have to be vulnerable and not just say here on this, it's easy for us to say it, but actually show up and be vulnerable. So thank you first for that and showing up in that way. And you mentioned that it was so liberating when you realized that for that scenario, it wasn't a have to fix yourself, but you reached out and got help to figure out how can I get out of this moment, this place. And I want to know what kind of habits or practices, do you have for helping you heal and listening to your body better?
Yeah, I think that is a work in progress thing, and it is it's not been one thing, and I think that is also very common. It's not always like one thing that's happening to you, but sometimes there's like different things happening at different point of time. So to your question, what do I do to help myself heal? And, is one, I do take the time that I need. I do have my escape points, right? Like, somebody once pointed out to me saying that, are you really very busy at work? And I'm very passionate about my work. I actually, my work continuously comes into my own personal space a lot because, again, and Kristin, I have a feeling you might resonate with this. When we work on diversity, equity, inclusion, anything that we are dropping, a friend of
Yes.
mine, a DI professional, articulated this really well, says, anything we are dropping, it makes us feel as if it's actually impacting somebody's life. So we might as well do it.
Yes.
Right? It's not a,
Yes.
it's not just a product or something else that's not like a human person, right? Anything that I feel I wish I could have done that better. And that's my excitement. That's my passion. It also comes into my personal space. So I actually get out. I travel quite a bit. That helped me heal a lot. Also, experience of, I think that was also very liberating for me to just get out with friends, be myself. When you're traveling, there are uncomfortable spaces you're in. Maybe a space you're living in, maybe what you're wearing, and you've gone somewhere and you figured that your clothes are not the right thing to wear in a certain this thing, or you're adjusting to a cuisine of different places. So that's been like a really like an escape and a learning space. And it's also, again, come back to how I see diversity. I also actually ask for help a lot. I'll tell you, I ask for help from everyone I know that could help. It could also be, if I'm working on a wellness goal and if I've seen another person who could have similar work related challenges, like timing and bandwidth and more, I have gone to them and say, I've actually gone to people and said, share your entire day's plan with me. Like, how are you managing time? Because I need to decipher that. Right. I have continued to work with counselors when I felt really stuck. Right. And it may not have been a trauma experience counseling, etc. But, that's become more like a coaching conversation. If I felt that there is somebody who speaks to me in a way that I can understand them, and I have gone to them saying that, what do you think? I'm in a dilemma. And I've maybe spoken to 3-4 people sometimes to get their point of view and chosen what works for me. So I ask for help. I travel. I also meet a lot of people. So I have to tell you, I meet a lot of youngsters who show me a very different way of life. And sometimes I learn a lot from them.
Yes, I love that. So many amazing points in that, and I resonated deeply. I actually just got back from Saudi Arabia. I have a client that I'm working with there in Saudi Arabia, and then I was also in Greece after that for a mastermind. And in this Greece, I am, so first in Saudi Arabia, I am working with executives, going in deep, looking at, and figuring out for myself. This is my third trip there. But every time I go, to your point, figuring out, it's a different space. I have to think about how I'm showing up. And I know this brings us a slightly different topic, but how I show up to be authentically me, yet showing up in a space that I'm going to be dressing differently than I do when I'm here based in the United States, right? I'm in long sleeves, I'm in long pants, and it's hot in my standards in Michigan. It's not nearly as hot. So, when I'm dressing this way, it's to show respect. But I still am my authentic self while doing this. And I love, to your point, the piece about traveling, and it takes us out of our comfort zones in a sense, or it gives us a place for escape to learn and experience from others and see different perspectives. And I feel like, to me, that makes me be more authentically me and understand what is authentically me. Does that resonate?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in fact, let me ask you a question on that. Like, a white woman from Michigan, right, in the diversity and inclusion space, And I know this assignment in Saudi Arabia is not your only assignment that takes you in a very different zone, right? The way certain environments, social environments in US, for example, in Europe,
Yes.
and across the world, it is what has have you been questioned for the authenticity? Have you felt that even your competency in this space is questioned just because of who you are in your origin?
Thank you for the question. And I would say daily. It's daily questioned, which makes me once in a while, when it catches me in a low moment, makes me question myself. And so this is where I get high performance coaching also to bring me back, because I've been in this field of inclusion, diversity, equity, and belonging for over 20 years. That's a whole nother thing that people say, no, you look young. I'm like, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Because every day as I get older, I appreciate those kind of comments. Yet at the same time, my studies are deeply in this. My experiences are deeply in this. I've led inclusion and diversity. And I recognize I am a white woman with blue eyes, blonde hair. And that impacts how I show up and how others perceive me. And so I had a moment like this in Greece, actually, just 2 weeks ago, that it deeply hurt me for a moment when someone who looked at me and said, what do I have to learn from you? And she's female. And at the same time, we're different races, different ethnicities. And we didn't know each other well yet. And to me, it took me back, and it was almost a sorrow that I felt, because the work that we do is around belonging. And I believe we each have a story to tell. And without knowing and asking and trying to listen to the other person, we're human and we make snap judgments. So for the first moment, I was kind of like, oh, wow, ouch. And then I was like, wait, listen, pause and listen to what she's actually saying, because sometimes we need to hear from people who look like ourselves. Other times we need to hear from people who look different than us. And then at the same time, it's not just about looks. And I know you and I share this in how we talk about the intersectionality, that we are so many things, and how we show up, it's so many layers, so many experiences that we bring. And for me, what people often don't know, and I'm going to give it away if anyone sees me talk, but in some of my talks, I'll start off and say, bueno, mi nombre es Cristina y yo soy de Michigan. And I start speaking in Spanish, and they say, whoa, that came out of left field. Like, I wasn't expecting that. And I'll say, yes, that's just one little piece of my story that you wouldn't know from looking at me. So I guess those are the pieces. I do get questioned, but now when I get questions about this, like, what do you know about inclusion, diversity, equity, and belonging? My thing is, wow, what an amazing chance to share some of my story and hear about their story. What would you add to that?
Yeah, I regret that you have this experience so often. I'm not surprised because I think we are like matchmakers trying to bring a vision to an already existing way of how things are, and we're also matching communities and underrepresentations of which we cannot be part of all of them, right? But to have your passion questioned can be really sad. I may have had some of those moments, right? But I've also felt attacked, right? Mostly by side one, which is people in power doing things the way they are, and feeling that this is a disruption of every day of how we work, how things are, and that also is something for all people listening. If you're on this subject, these are some things that one has to deal with, take it into their stride. I do feel that, I'm hoping for everyone who's a DEI practitioner, a leader, an enthusiastic, that your quotient of fulfillment is way more than
Yeah.
the sorrow or the regret and the pain that you may have felt in the way. I think to be authentic is also to embrace that this is a reality of
Mm.
of all of our lives.
Mm. That was so powerful. I hope for anyone who's on here listening wrote that down, because that I just want to call that out. We need to hear and understand that the reality that's there and the perceptions that others have. We need to see that. And also, for me, it's not falling into the trap of then losing our confidence and losing who we are because of what others are saying. And to your point, I think it's about being, a lot of us in this space and leading in the space of inclusion, diversity, equity, and belonging are trailblazers. We're change agents, we're mavericks, all the words that we can use. But that means that we are also daily going to run into barriers and going to run into people or things that will say no, and put up walls that don't need to be there. And you and I both have this mindset around experimentation. And it can be so hard to go towards that experimentation and run towards it when we get no's so often.
Yes,
Are you still there?
I am. A little bit of an electricity outage.
Oh no. Well, I doesn't have red bubble, but I can hear your voice. There you are. I see your face.
This is going to be funny, but that's okay. I think humor is a good part of.
That's right. We're being authentic in the moment.
Yeah. But something happened. Then again, I thought, let me bring that piece as well and ask you a question that of all the places where we feel the need and we strive to be authentic. And I think balance and authenticity is always like in the moment. I also wish that whoever is listening also understand there's no one formula, there's no one state of being, in my opinion, that you find that balance, that sometimes not being in balance is going towards balance in the longer term, right? And being right. And I got a message from my son, which I tend to look at his messages. So bringing the personal side of things, I personally feel very strongly cautious about the fact that a lot of people sometimes have very high standards for people and DI leaders, people who hold inclusion very close to their heart. In every space that they exist. It's not just professionally, but also personally, how you behave. There's a certain perception of how you should behave. It's not just about the clothes, but what you say. Every word is almost getting noticed, and that's probably the reality of any leader's life. But also in your personal space, how you're reacting, responding to everything that's around us. And we were discussing how both of us have sons, and as mothers bringing up this in the environment and climate that we have, I feel that extra pressure. I worry, I wonder what's the right thing to do to ensure that my son truly demonstrates. It's not just me, but my son also truly demonstrates inclusive behaviors, a mindset. People who are close to me, like my mother and others, are also in a way reflecting inclusion in their own spaces. Do you feel that pressure, Kristin? Do you?
Yes, yes. And it's I would say one of the most challenging things. So first of all, I had two burnouts so far in my career. I'm 42 now, and had them because I wasn't focused first enough on my family, and I was trying to drive change, system change in an organization, and holding on to it like I had to do it myself. Right. And so I'll get to your question about this, but this was so hard for me to, first of all, feel like, how can I be a good mom? to my young boys at the time, how can I be a good mom and at the same time drive this work forward that's really hard? And when I come home from work, I'm exhausted and I didn't have the tools, the practices, the habits yet to keep me energized through the day. And so I had to learn those after I went through my second burnout to say, I can't go back to this. But to really show up to my family and show that I have a listening ear. So let's say to extended family. That too plays a role in this. Yes, I want their representation of me. I am of them. We're a unit as a collective family. And at the same time, we have very different perspectives on even politics, or how we see the world. And this can be, from the family I'm married into, or it can be so hard then because before, and I've been a part of this family for almost 25 years. And part of the challenge for me was they would say, oh, Kristin's here. We have to be politically correct. And I'll say, no, what I do is not about political correctness at all. I'd rather us have a really challenging conversation and maybe even agree to disagree in the end, but that we're talking through to hear each other and see the different perspectives. But this is where it can be really hard to hold these titles. How about for you? Have you experienced that also?
Yeah, I mean, more recently, apart from the fact that I totally resonate with the burnout piece, in fact, this year I've had some times when I felt really burnt out more often than others, like, a couple of times this year, which is when I was like, I had to really decipher how to keep myself in better health more than anything else, right? And I'm so thankful that I have a lot of people at work who support me, who are almost pushing me, more than pushing me to say, how are you doing this? Because this is important and this is also going to be important for my work. But like you said, I have so many memories of people, when we feel othered just because of, how we speak about different groups. And more recently, somebody said, don't be so serious all the time. And I think it can be a hurtful comment if somebody's trying to belittle a point of view or the work that you're doing. But this particular person actually was saying that, you pointed out that in your regular conversation also, you're, talking so much of DEI, which means, are you really having fun? Are you really switching off from the topic at times? So I get it. And I've had people who would say that. In fact, I feel for DI champions that I support, because they come back with these, with these comments, which is what I would also club under the attack zone. Like sometimes you do feel under that.
And to your point, sorry.
Go ahead.
Just to your point, the networking piece. So for DE&I champions, for them to be able to come together, whether it's in an organization or across organizations, this is one of the things I'm most passionate about right now. I started a company, Exponential Inclusion, because I feel like when champions can come together and really create a new way of seeing the world together and actually bond in a way that they may still burn out, but if they find that other people are like-minded and differently minded and we're able to work together effectively, there's less of a chance for us to fall through the cracks because you're feeling that belonging somewhere. So I think that's a critical point you made.
Yeah, and let me just turn a little bit around, and that's what I was going to add, is that sometimes we'll not get there. Like, we may not actually understand every underrepresented group, every community, that come under that perspective, right? Like a DEI perspective. I also, so there are times when we will make mistakes, and I feel that we have to be okay with that, right? Everyone who's listening, I think, being authentic doesn't mean, with all the pressure that we already give ourselves, it doesn't mean that we will not be wrong. To me, being authentic, being inclusive is also remembering the first point of being vulnerable and opening up to failures, learning from failures, and sharing that learning, frankly, like, for example, in the LGBTQI community, when we talk about pronouns, for example, I share my own instances of failures where I was, misgendering someone. Somebody was correcting me, but my optics is giving me different inputs. I'm used to saying something, and I had to forgive myself first to say, okay, I will, without getting frustrated with the fact that I was misgendering someone. And thankfully, and I'm very, very grateful that, people who helped me along the way were very patient, saying that I understand, Vieshaka, this is not pronoun. And that's how I got to be a very strong ally. I started feeling so strongly. When we talk about, different geographies will have different connotations. We will have certain geographies which have a very strong fabric of race and ethnicity discrimination, whereas there would be geographies who will not be able to identify or even understand and have no comprehension of that subject. And they would have a race ethnicity nuance that is very different from other worlds, right? Same for people with disabilities when we talk about visible, non-visible disabilities, right? When we talk about even layers about, caregiving, and then, in our organization, we talk about caregiving of pets as well, apart from your children, elders, family members, and people who may or may not have pets. And there are different ways in which we take care of pets, right? Like, what is our involvement or contribution? We'll make different comments. And we all have to be on point to say it's totally okay to be work in progress, but making meaningful, intentional progress. I think that to me is authenticity. It's the same in our personal space. It's the same in our workspace. And I think I'm going to be in that space for a very long time as well.
Yeah, I think we're human, so we will always be in that space, or at least hopefully intentionally be in that space of learning. I think this is where, when we think about growth mindset, this is why we're trying to get people, it's our jobs to get people into that role of how can we grow from what we're learning, including ourselves, and being in spaces and going and living and working in spaces that are very different from where I grew up presents areas that there are big gaps of knowledge. And no matter what, whether I try my best to have a high level of cultural intelligence and say like, okay, I'm really motivated to be here and do this, and I'm going to learn about this culture, or however we define that culture, crossing this cultural border. And then I'm going to plan out, I'm going to do this and this differently. And when I show up, my actions, maybe because my rote memory kicks in and makes me do what I've always done, or maybe it's I'm mirroring too much. So I start losing myself in how I'm showing up to someone, and then it feels inauthentic to them. I mean, there are times we will mess up. So I love that you called that out here at the end, that we are learning and we're human beings. And so for me, being authentic means that I recognize that, and that I will do my best to show up and do what I can to learn before I do, and to talk to people so I can be the best version of myself wherever I am. Yet at the same time, giving myself grace and saying, yes, do what you can and continue to learn. So I appreciate all of your comments. And I think we might be out of time already, which means you and I will have to catch up later, because I just love talking with you, Vieshaka. It's really, really, Vieshaka, been a pleasure.
I totally agree, and I can resonate with that, Kristin, and we will have to catch up for sure. I do want to, before we close, I do want to say that you've been really brave, like really brave. When we think of the journey that you would have had to make, the questioning that comes for a person who looks like a person in total privilege, and dismissal of things. And this is something that a lot of people who are probably watching might be going through. And I want them to know that this is a part of the journey. Making mistakes is a part of the journey. Being in that space that gives you pain, getting over it and sharing. Like, for example, when you mentioned my LinkedIn post, I don't think I would have dreamt of doing that a few years back. It was vulnerable for me, but it is the mental health month,
Mm.
and in fact we have a very live LinkedIn live going on very soon from the organization normalizing time off and vacation. But I felt that this topic needed more people to speak up and share,
Yes.
and be themselves, so that more people get hope that maybe we are in that space now, but life can get better, and we can get better at handling what comes out. So I'm so grateful, and I'm really happy, and I would hand it over to Rudinov for this wonderful opportunity, and wish all the best to all the audience.